It is my honor, pleasure, and duty to begin this new season of Difficult Dialogues.
My name is Dr. Demetria Shabazz, and I'm here with another Difficult Dialogues that we do in partnership with Amherst Media. I'm with my colleagues who are bringing to South Hadley Center Church an exhibit called Voices of Resilience, which is highlighting both local, state, and national histories pertaining to women. Thank you all for joining me today. And Janine Fondon, if you could just introduce yourself a bit and let everyone know all the other things that, of course, that you are doing and the many hats that you wear in the Valley.
Well, it's an honor to be with you all today, and especially on this occasion of sharing voices. I am a professor at Bay Path University. I'm also chair of our communications department. And along with this wonderful exhibit, Voices of Resilience, I also have created the On the Move Forum, which has now just united, I think we're up to about 1,000 women over our 5-year period of engaging in conversations that are critical to us learning more about history and trends in our society, and just being together with each other. We talk so much about belonging, but I think that's one of my hallmarks. I'm hoping to have us all understand how that happens and make it happen in certain spaces.
You are the owner and co-founder of Unity First in Springfield. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, well, I also want to, credit my wonderful husband, Tom, Tom and I have been on this journey now for over 20 years in terms of telling stories. UnityFirst.com has been that source for both Tom and I. When we moved to this area, Tom from Mississippi and me from New York, planted in New England, and to say we not only do we need to communicate, but we need to share the wonderful stories and history of us being in these places, and to connect with our neighbors and connect with our workmates and others. So we've had this very full and rich life of connecting people from Dick Gregory to Lucy Lewis. It really has been a wonderful, and now to be in South Hadley to meet all the wonderful new friends there and hear those stories.
Dr. Lucy Lewis, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you share a bit of your background as an author and how you came to this project?
Well, it's Janine's fault. I always blame Janine. She is truly a connector. And when I began on a path of an entrepreneurship, so to speak, one of the first people I was told I needed to meet was Janine Fondon. And I immediately called her, and she has been a wonderful colleague and ally and support and mentor over the years that we've been working together. So I am honored and thrilled to be able to continue to be part of the work that she does, where it's possible for me to lend my skills. We're an interesting duo because my skill set is so very different from the communications field. I am the owner of Creative Futures, which is a small business consulting firm, and my skill set is truly research, analysis, and small business growth and consulting and organizational development. So it's an interesting blend to bring that into the voices of the future and voices of resilience. And the reason is because as a genealogist, that historical perspective is so critical, bringing people stories of yesterday so they can see that they didn't just plop onto the earth and start a journey on their own. We're all walking a path that's already been trod for us. We're all part of a story that began hundreds of years ago. We're continuing the work that other people did. And in being able to embrace that reality and recognize our place in this world of continuation is so critical. And telling those stories and sharing those stories and giving ourselves and others permission to recognize who we are within that journey falls right into my passion. And it falls into using the skills that I bring to this project as a researcher and scholar. So why Voices of Resilience is so important to me is that we have to begin making sure that our young people, our friends, our neighbors, our relatives are all part of understanding the story and the journey that needs to be made. And you don't begin to sow seeds of unity without sowing seeds of inclusion, sowing seeds of understanding, and sowing seeds of sharing. And Voices of Resilience, because of the women that it highlights and the stories that it tells, begins to help sow those seeds. And I'm so excited that so many people will get to see that opportunity to be part of that. And hopefully it'll jiggle a question in their mind, well, who do I have that's part of that story? Where do I fit? Does Grandma have a story that would help me better understand where I fit? And begin those family conversations so we can begin those community conversations so we can build those friendships.
So many people don't know one another's histories and stories and their struggles. So I think this is an opportunity to bring that to the forefront and hopefully unify folks over these wonderful histories and stories. You yourself are part of this exhibit, as is Janine. Not only because of your own contributions to the community of Springfield and beyond, but if you could just share a snippet of when you talk about building on others' stories and histories within the family, how did that shape what we'll be seeing in terms of your profile for this exhibit, Lucy?
Well, that's an interesting question because growing up, I did not believe I had a historical family. I had the people around me, and that was all I knew because I came from one of those families that didn't talk about yesterday as if there was something wrong with yesterday. And I lived with that until my son came home and was in absolute tears, and he said, I have to do a family tree, and I don't have a family. And I realized the importance for this delicate little fourth grader. If he could feel the weight and strain of that, it was time to end those shadows. So I began my extensive research. And in doing that research, the first family line that I found was going through the Nova Scotia roots to a Black loyalist that nobody in the family knew existed. Nobody in the family knew how we came to get to Nova Scotia and how we came to come back from Nova Scotia and why that was. And being able to share that information and help them understand who this Black loyalist was and why it mattered to the family, and how then the family came to be as it intermarried with the Micmac and the Acadian populations of the Digby, Weymouth, Nova Scotia area, and how that was impacted by the history of the great English expulsion of the Acadians from Canada. Sharing that information with the family shaped and influenced so many people. It was incredible.
These small stories have lasting effects and contribution, particularly when we talk about a community like Springfield, like Amherst, and that these are women-centered stories. And as you said, some of those stories didn't come to the surface, were not shared. And so we are, of course, drawing attention to them and women's contributions. Anita, hello. I know that this is for you in retirement as a nurse and in the legal profession. This is just one of many of the projects you have taken on in your very busy retirement. If you can share with us why this exhibit, Voices of Resilience, to partner with your church, Center Church in South Hadley.
There are so many things that have already been talked about that really demonstrate why we're bringing this, and so excited to bring Voices of Resilience to the Upper Valley and not just to South Hadley. We really want people up and down the Upper Valley to know about this and to come with this. And this has a little bit of a circuitous origin. And it started really about 4 or 5 years ago when Center Church, we started doing monthly vigils for different social justice issues, for healthcare access and voting rights and racial justice and climate change. And then, of course, George Floyd, that murder happened, and it really galvanized everyone's thinking. And South Hadley, like every town, just about every town, had a vigil, and it was very well attended, and it was clear how important this was finally to be able to speak out about racial justice. And as we were standing there, a couple of us, including Reverend Lori Souter, who is on a well-earned sabbatical now, and that's why she's not here, we talked about, we can't drop this. We have to keep going. So for about 18 months, we continued with weekly vigils. And now we've gone back to monthly. But during those 18 months, there was a continuous discussion of, wait a minute, this is nice, this is important, but what more can we do? What can we as a predominantly white, somewhat privileged, very privileged church community do to educate ourselves, to educate the community around us? And we were thinking of, perhaps an art exhibit, because we do have a small area that lends itself to being a gallery that we certainly developed in recent months and weeks. But we were talking about that. And then in a conversation between Demetria and I believe some coffee was involved, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Dee mentioned, well, there is this exhibit that Janine Fondon has put together, that I helped with, that Lucy Lewis, and that began. And now, because of COVID, it's almost a 2-year journey, I think, when we first started talking about it. So as this had developed, and fairly early on, the church as a community made what I think is a very important commitment. And that was, we want this to be as free of barriers as we could possibly make it. So for physical barriers, we have put it on the ground floor in what is often used as a small chapel and now is being converted to a gallery. But just as important, and maybe more important, was to be free of financial barriers. So we made the commitment that there will be no admission fee for this, for anyone. So that meant that we had to go out and beat the bushes. And fortunately, we have attracted the support of several local donors. There's E Inc. in South Hadley, Mount Holyoke College People's Bank, Thompson Financial Management, and they're in Northampton, Odyssey Bookstore, Sankofa Gumbo here in Amherst. And then we also have gotten a very generous grant from South Hadley Cultural Council, which is part of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. So we're coming to the end, the publicity. We're doing our best to get the word out to schools, to faith communities, to civic groups, because it will be in place for a month. And there will be a lot of opportunity to come see it. It will start with an opening event September 18th at 2 o'clock. We'll have speakers, including Janine and Lucy. And as we mentioned, the Amherst area Gospel Choir and Dr. Ruth Bass Green, with whom many of us know and have admired for a long time.
Thank you. And it's an honor every time I can mention my grandmother's name. They used to call her the ambassador of the block. And scary to think I'm sort of following in those shoes. But it's okay. And if we can do that for everyone who is out there trying to make a positive change, and we can raise their voices, I'm there.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, it's it just goes to show you that those small stories, not only within our families, but within the community, are stories that we all build upon. And what I also appreciate as someone who was brought in with Lucy and Janine is that these small stories have lasting effects and contribution.
It's not like you're presented with this history. We had several knocks on the door. One knock was from Ellis Island when they redid Ellis Island, and they said, your grandmother is going to be a part of the wall exhibit. And we were like, what, is what, and to go back and at the time, she had just recently passed, and we were like, wow, if we had known, we would have asked more questions. So, but we did go through, and we went to the ceremonies and all of that good stuff and learned it. And then we saw that our cousins were on the wall as well. And again, I took my classes from teaching college. I was taking them there to see it as well. So that was more history that we didn't know. And then another knock on the door from PBS when my aunt Irene Morgan, who she won her Supreme Court case regarding interstate busing 10 years before Rosa Parks. So this was another knock on the door, and I was just like, are you talking about Aunt Irene? And this was her. And and I remember her saying to me there's some pieces of me that we just don't know, but we don't know what some of these pieces did to people. I mean, you'll see through the exhibit the tragic story of how she ended up making that history. But it was certainly, we don't really know. And I think Lucy mentioned this too, is like, how does it affect us? Both of you, my grandmother who came, via Ellis Island in 1918, when you think about it, you say to yourself, oh my goodness, she got on that ship, how did that happen? And she landed in a place that she knew no one. And many, so it's just, the stories and like we say that, sometimes we need to hear this. And what I'm excited about this wonderful program that we'll have is everywhere we go with this exhibit, we do the research and legwork to honor those who have come before. So even if these are not names that we would have heard in the past, and even in doing some of this research, and I've asked people about it, and some will say, are you sure that's news from South Hadley? And this is just a testimony. And I also have to give credit to the great Lawana Hood, the late director of the Pan-African Historical Museum, in Springfield, because she was one of the first, women I met out here locally who was just like, well versed in her wonderful embrace that our story did not start with slavery. It started with empires. And of course, she had a grander way of saying it, but the point was well taken.
Hearing your connection with Ellis Island makes me reflect on my own connection with Ellis Island and how important reaching back further than that and mining those stories is really critical. So it's one of the goals that we have, to educate people for the stories that are there, but also to prompt those, what about your story? Have you asked those oldest living relatives? Get to them quickly. All of us have regrets about not having asked the right questions soon enough. Let this be the impetus for other people. Sometimes in this journey, I've despaired that we would be able to ever come together and make this happen because of some of the barriers. But the more I hear you talk about it, the more excited I get, the more I see that the commitment to bring this to the Upper Valley has really been an important mission in my life. And I hope in others. Hearing your own stories, hearing your connection with Ellis Island makes me reflect on my own connection with Ellis Island and how important reaching back further than that and mining those stories is really critical. So it's one of the goals that we have, to educate people for the stories that are there, but also to prompt those, what about your story? Have you asked those oldest living relatives? Get to them quickly. All of us have regrets about not having asked the right questions soon enough. Let this be the impetus for other people to tell their own family stories and to learn about others, because I think the importance of bringing this exhibit to a town like South Hadley is to be able to say, our stories are important, but listen to the others. Learn about the others. There is something rich in holding up those stories as well. So I really appreciate all three of you and your efforts to be able to bring this up. And I hope that as many people as possible will benefit from all your hard work.
So this exhibit really honors those wonderful people that have come before, and just to also put it out there are so many stories. I encourage people to support this project with grants or engagement in some ways, because we want to tell so many more, and we'll get so much more of the full story, but it takes a lot of support. And we just want to thank Center Church and thank everyone who is bringing this, and thank you to Dee for bringing it to our attention as well, because that's what it takes, and we want to honor that.
You answered it beautifully. Knowing our past definitely strengthens us, and it's framed by the West African notion of Sankofa, and going, we have to look to the past in order to fortify and strengthen us into our futures.
And as you come to the opening, it's a very special opening where we are not only being welcomed by Center Church and the community, but we take this as a deep honor to everyone that we stand on their shoulders. So we march in with everyone, and you'll meet so many interesting people, and I would say stories.
We have some limited open hours: Saturday 10 to 1, Sunday 11 to 2, Wednesday 4 to 7. But we will accommodate as best we can group visits by appointment. So we're really hoping that people will hear about this, know about it, come to the opening, get groups to come.
And so it is critical that we look to the past, not just to be able to have bragging rights, to be able to have an anchor, to be able to know I stand on somebody. Your sticks, your stones, your negativity, your isolation, your exclusion, they don't matter because I know I have a place, because I know I come from someplace. And that gives us a strength of understanding that lets us withstand storms that we otherwise might be knocked over by. And if we can share those stories more widely and help, particularly these young people who are so battered by the insanity of the day, I think is the best, most polite way to describe that. If we can share those stories and give them that steel in their backbone that my grandmother said you need to walk with in order to stand tall in the face of any storm you face. We aren't passing on that steel the way we should. And stories like that come out of Voices of Resilience, stories that come out of oral histories such as you do, stories that come out of genealogical research, those stories are the stories that stand people tall and stand people ready to face tomorrow because they know I have an army of history, of life, of experience, and of unity behind me that's going to move me forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anita. And thank you to Center Church for partnering with us to be able to bring this exhibit that was first in Springfield and now to the community in South Hadley, but as you say, in the Upper Valley. I think those are stories of women that are often overlooked. And, you know, when we think of the powerful Chinese proverb of women hold up the sky, this is really a demonstration of how our small stories, some people may see them as small stories. There certainly are some larger stories within the exhibit, but how we build upon that and how women and their contributions, large or small, are so important to our communities, to our civic engagement, that we need to honor that. And we're trying to do that, of course, in this exhibit at Center Church. Thank you so much. Janine, I'm going to give you the last word. Anita has given us a kind of a preview about the opening. What else should we expect regarding this exhibit?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I hope everybody will come to the opening so that they can experience all of us really belonging in that space and with all of the stories and with all of us. That's the beginning, for all of us. If it weren't for this process, I would never have met Anita or Reverend Lori and others. And if the world could just do that a little more, and I'm encouraging through, at your workplace, at your, your classroom, your boardroom. This is the work that really has to be done so that we can make the world a space where we all truly belong, we're heard, we are seen, and we are respected.